Did you know people in the Middle Ages had their own version of shopping malls? Ever wonder where a peasant might buy exotic spices from the East? What if I told you medieval fairgrounds were basically ancient music festivals, shopping centers, and cultural exchanges all rolled into one? Number 10. The legacy that shaped our modern world. The echoes of medieval fairgrounds still bounce around in our modern lives. When you visit a county fair or walk through a Christmas market, you're experiencing something that would feel surprisingly familiar to someone from the 13th century. These medieval gatherings created patterns of trade and celebration that stuck with us through the centuries. Many of our modern commercial practices were born in the dust and noise of these old fairgrounds. The concept of setting up temporary shops, haggling over prices, and creating a festive atmosphere to encourage spending, these are all medieval innovations that major retailers still use today. Black Friday sales. That's just a modern fair day with air conditioning. The routes between major fairs created the first real European trade networks. Merchants would travel from Champagne to Leipzig to London, following a circuit of fairs that operated at different times of the year. These routes eventually became permanent trade roads, and some modern highways actually follow the same paths that medieval merchants carved out with their cart wheels. Banking as we know it got its big break at these fairs. Money changers had to set up shop because merchants from different regions all brought different currencies. These money changers eventually developed into the first banks. The famous Medici banking empire started with humble beginnings at Italian fairs, changing one type of coin for another. Even entertainment industries owe a debt to medieval fairs. Traveling performers found their biggest audiences at these events, developing acts that would appeal to diverse crowds. The juggling, acrobatics, and theatrical performances that entertained fairgoers then evolved into the circus traditions and street performances we still enjoy. Number 9. The women of the fairgrounds. Were women just shoppers at medieval fairs? Not even close. Women played crucial roles in fair commerce, often ruling certain trades completely. Alewives brewed and sold beer, dominating the beverage market at many English fairs. Textile merchants were frequently women, especially those dealing in finished cloth and clothing. Female merchants faced special challenges at fairs. Many needed permission from husbands or male relatives to conduct business officially, yet records show numerous women operated independently anyway. Widows particularly found economic freedom in fair trade, often continuing their late husbands' businesses but adding their own innovations. The fair provided rare economic opportunities for women in an otherwise restrictive society. Court records from the Fair of St. Ives in England show women bringing and defending commercial cases independently, suggesting they wielded real business authority. Some fairs even had women serving as official price inspectors, weighing goods to ensure customers weren't being cheated. Women also found social freedom at fairgrounds that wasn't available in everyday life. The temporary nature of fairs meant normal social rules loosened slightly. Women could travel with merchant groups, manage stalls without constant male supervision, and engage directly with customers from all walks of life, experiences typically denied to them. For peasant women, fairs represented rare chances to sell homemade goods directly and keep the profits. Dairy products, eggs, handcrafted items, and baked goods filled the smaller stalls run by local women, creating an essential income stream for rural families that bypassed the usual male-dominated market systems. Number 8. The dark side of medieval fairs. Did fairs attract only honest merchants and happy customers? Think again. Where money flowed, crime followed like a shadow. Pickpockets worked the crowds with surprising skill, sometimes organized in sophisticated rings that could strip a wealthy merchant of purse and valuables before he'd even noticed being bumped in the crowd. Con artists developed elaborate schemes specifically for fairgrounds. The shell game has medieval origins, with tricksters using cups and balls to separate gullible visitors from their coins. False miracle workers set up stalls near church-sponsored fairs, selling fake relics or performing staged healings that separated desperate people from their money. Prostitution flourished around major fairs, with temporary brothels appearing in towns that normally prohibited such activities. Authorities often looked the other way during fair time because the increased commerce was too valuable to threaten with strict enforcement of moral codes. Some towns even collected special taxes from these establishments during fairs. Violence was common enough that special fair courts had to be established. These courts delivered swift justice, sometimes holding trials and executing punishments all in one day. A thief caught on Monday might be hanging from the gallows by Tuesday evening, serving as a grim warning to others considering similar crimes. Food fraud was perhaps the most common crime at fairs. Merchants diluted wine with water, mixed sawdust into flour, and sold rotten meat disguised with spices. The authorities struggled constantly against these practices, employing food inspectors who would publicly destroy contaminated goods and fine dishonest sellers. Number 7. The sounds and smells of medieval commerce. What hit you first at a medieval fair, the noise or the smell? Both assaulted visitors before they even arrived at the fairgrounds. The cacophony of hundreds of merchants shouting their wares, animals bellowing in livestock pens, musicians competing for attention, and thousands of people talking created a wall of sound that could be heard miles away. The smells were equally overwhelming. Roasting meats, fresh bread, and exotic spices created appetizing aromas that mixed with less pleasant scents: animal dung, unwashed bodies, tanning chemicals for leather goods, and smoke from countless cooking fires. The sensory experience was intense and unforgettable, especially for rural people used to quieter environments. Music played constantly at medieval fairs. Wandering minstrels performed popular songs, while drummers and pipers created atmosphere. Some merchants hired musicians to attract customers to their stalls, creating competition that sometimes erupted into literal battle of the bands as performers tried to outplay each other. The soundscape included official announcements too. Town criers moved through the fairgrounds announcing important information, new arrivals of goods, and sometimes the punishments being carried out for those caught breaking fair rules. Their distinctive calls became part of the audio tapestry of fair life. Languages mingled in a kind of medieval Tower of Babel. A visitor to the Champagne fairs might hear French, German, Italian, Flemish, English, Arabic, and more exotic tongues as merchants from across the known world congregated. This linguistic diversity led to the development of specialized trading languages and the first commercial interpreters who made good money helping to negotiate deals. Number 6. The church, the crown, and the fair. Who actually controlled these massive commercial gatherings? It's complicated. Many fairs originated as religious celebrations, with the local church or monastery claiming authority. The right to hold a fair was valuable. Officials collected entry fees, taxes on transactions, and rents for stall spaces. Kings saw fairs as golden opportunities to fill royal coffers. Monarchs across Europe issued special charters granting fair rights to towns, churches, or noble supporters. These charters were essentially licenses to print money, as a successful fair generated substantial revenue through taxation. Kings often exempted fair merchants from normal tolls to encourage attendance, making up the difference through volume. The church maintained an awkward relationship with fairgrounds. Religious authorities condemned the excesses that often accompanied fairs. Drunkenness, gambling, and prostitution flourished in these temporary communities. Yet the same church officials happily collected rents and fees from the very activities they condemned from pulpits. Local towns and their guilds fought fiercely for control over fairs in their regions. Established guilds particularly resented foreign merchants who could temporarily bypass their monopolies during fair time. This tension created complex regulations about who could sell what, when, and where within the fairgrounds, with different rules for locals versus visitors. The competition for fair rights occasionally erupted into violence. Historical records show towns sending armed citizens to disrupt rival fairs, sometimes destroying goods or blocking roads to prevent merchants from reaching competing events. The economic stakes were simply too high to leave to chance or fair competition. Number 5. From saints' days to commercial powerhouses. How did religious celebrations transform into massive commercial enterprises? The connection between saints and shopping isn't obvious today, but it made perfect sense in medieval times. Many major fairs began as religious festivals celebrating a local saint's feast day, when pilgrims would gather at churches or cathedrals. Smart church officials noticed the crowds attracted merchants, who set up impromptu markets to serve the gathered pilgrims. Eventually, the commercial aspects grew so large they overshadowed the religious origins. The famous Bartholomew Fair in London began as a celebration of Saint Bartholomew, but eventually became London's most important cloth market. The rhythm of the Christian calendar determined the fair circuit. Large fairs were strategically scheduled around major feast days when peasants and nobles alike had reason to celebrate and spend money. Staggering these events throughout the year created an international fair calendar that merchants could follow from region to region. Religious relics served as major attractions that guaranteed attendance. A church claiming to possess a saint's finger bone or a piece of the true cross could draw thousands of pilgrims, creating a ready-made customer base for merchants. Some cynical observers noted that the number of authentic, holy relics seemed to multiply mysteriously during prosperous fair times. By the 14th century, many fairs had nearly completely shed their religious origins in all but name. The Saint Denis Fair near Paris became so commercialized that contemporary chroniclers complained the saint's actual feast day passed almost unnoticed amid the frantic buying and selling. Number 4. The international language of trade. Did a German merchant need to speak French to buy English wool at the Champagne fairs? Not necessarily. Medieval traders developed fascinating workarounds for language barriers. A complex system of hand signals evolved specifically for price negotiations, allowing merchants to haggle across language divides by flashing fingers under a cloth to maintain privacy. Commercial documents became increasingly standardized, with formats recognizable across borders. Bills of exchange, inventory lists, and contracts followed templates that transcended language, using familiar layouts so that an Italian merchant could understand the basics of a Flemish trader's paperwork even without speaking the language. Professional interpreters emerged as essential middlemen at major international fairs. These linguistic brokers typically commanded multiple languages and understood the technical terminology of various trades. They weren't just translators but negotiation facilitators who earned commissions by making deals happen between parties who couldn't directly communicate. Certain fairs became associated with specific languages. The Champagne fairs operated primarily in French, while the Frankfurt Fair conducted business mainly in German. Merchants prepared accordingly, either bringing interpreters or learning enough of the dominant language to conduct basic transactions. A simplified trading language naturally evolved at these crossroads of commerce. This fair speak borrowed words from multiple languages, creating a commercial pidgin that focused exclusively on numbers, goods, qualities, and prices. Remnants of this specialized vocabulary entered many European languages, leaving linguistic footprints of medieval commerce. Number 3. Life-changing goods from distant lands. What treasures could change a medieval person's life? At major fairs, a peasant might touch silk for the first time, a fabric so fine and smooth it seemed supernatural compared to rough homespun cloth. Nobles could purchase exotic spices that transformed bland winter meals into memorable feasts. The fairground was where the exotic became accessible. Spices dominated the luxury trade at medieval fairs. Pepper was so valuable it was sometimes used as currency. Cinnamon, cloves, nutmeg, and ginger arrived via tortuous trade routes from Asia, passing through dozens of hands before reaching European fairgrounds. These aromatic treasures sold in tiny quantities at enormous prices, but the demand never diminished. Technological innovations spread through fair networks. A new type of plow or loom displayed at a major fair could be copied and implemented across Europe within a few years. Merchants didn't just sell goods, they sold ideas, techniques, and innovations that transformed medieval productivity. Books and manuscripts found eager buyers at fairs long before printing presses existed. University towns with fairs became intellectual hubs where rare texts changed hands. The fair at Leipzig eventually grew into the center of the German book trade, a role it maintained for centuries. The humble flea often traveled home with fairgoers, along with its microscopic companion, the plague bacterium. The Black Death followed trade routes, with major fairs serving as distribution hubs not just for goods but for disease. The connectivity that made fairs economically vital also made them dangerous vectors during epidemics. Number 2, the fair as a social safety valve. Why did authorities tolerate the chaos of fairgrounds? Fairs served as pressure release valves for medieval society. The rigid social structure temporarily relaxed during fair time, allowing commoners and nobles to mingle in ways normally forbidden. This controlled period of relaxed rules actually helped maintain the strict hierarchy during the rest of the year. Entertainment that would normally be considered inappropriate received special permission during fairs. Plays mocking authority figures, body performances, and gambling were all generally permitted within fair boundaries, giving common people rare opportunities to blow off steam through entertainment. Exceptional legal protections applied during fair time. Many regions established fair peace, special legal status that imposed harsher penalties for violence during fairs and protected even foreigners and religious minorities who normally enjoyed few rights. This created rare zones of relative safety for travelers and minority merchants. For young people, fairs provided crucial opportunities for mixing beyond their immediate villages. Many marriages could trace their beginnings to chance meetings at fairgrounds, where young men and women from different communities could interact with less supervision than usual. This periodic mixing prevented the genetic isolation that might otherwise have affected small medieval communities. The temporary communities formed at fairgrounds allowed for information exchange that authorities couldn't easily control. News, rumors, political ideas, and religious concepts spread through fair networks, creating a medieval form of social media that occasionally worried those in power but proved impossible to suppress without destroying the economic benefits of the fairs themselves. Number 1, the birth of fair culture in medieval Europe. When did Europeans start gathering to trade and celebrate? The Romans established regular market fairs throughout their empire, but the system collapsed along with Roman authority. The rebirth began slowly, with Charlemagne encouraging regular markets in the 8th and 9th centuries as part of his attempt to rebuild commercial networks in Europe. The Champagne fairs emerged as the superstars of the medieval fair circuit by the 12th century. Located in northeastern France, these 6 annual fairs operated on a rotating schedule that allowed international merchants to move from one to the next. Their strategic position between northern Europe and Mediterranean trade routes made them natural crossroads for goods and merchants. Local agricultural cycles shaped fair timing and specialties. Harvest fairs focused on grain and produce, sheep shearing season brought wool fairs, and autumn fairs featured wine from recent grape harvests. Smart fair organizers aligned their events with natural production cycles to ensure maximum goods would be available. Royal protection proved essential for fair development. The Counts of Champagne famously guaranteed the safety of merchants traveling to their fairs, maintaining special armed guards to patrol roads and punishing any nobles who robbed traders. This security, unusual for medieval times, attracted merchants willing to bring valuable goods from afar. By the 13th century, a sophisticated network of fairs operated across Europe with specialized events for different products. Textiles dominated some fairs, while others focused on metalwork, spices, livestock, or wines. This specialization encouraged merchants to travel between multiple fairs annually, creating Europe's first integrated market system. Ever wondered why so many modern cities still have fairgrounds or exhibition centers in their oldest districts? Did medieval merchants understand they were creating commercial systems that would last for centuries? What echoes of these ancient marketplaces still ring through your local farmer's market or holiday bazaar?